In the heart of the Olembi kingdom, where the river sang lullabies to the forests, and the sun kissed the golden rooftops of the king's palace, lived a young man named Kwaku. His father, Chief Oduro, was a respected elder of the land, known for his wisdom, wealth, and many wives. But among all the women he had married, one stood out, Nana, the youngest and most enchanting of them all. Nana was not just beautiful, she was a woman whose presence could silence the winds. Her skin gleamed like polished ebony, and her voice was as smooth as the flowing waters of the Anansi River. But behind her enchanting eyes lurked a secret, one that would shake the very foundation of the Olembi kingdom. Kwaku had always been a strong-willed young man. Though he was the son of a powerful chief, he never allowed privilege to define him. He was skilled in hunting, trained in warfare, and well-versed in the customs of his people. But there was one battle he could never fight, his father's wife, Nana. Since the day Nana stepped into their home, Kwaku had felt something strange in the air. It was as if the winds whispered secrets he could not understand. Nana was different from the other wives of his father. She moved like a shadow, her words dripping with honey yet hiding something darker. She had an unnatural charm, one that even the elders could not resist. But Kwaku, young and observant, knew that something was not right. He noticed how his father, once a strong and firm leader, now sat for hours under Nana's spell, listening to her every word as if she had the wisdom of the gods. He saw how his other mothers, once proud and respected, now walked with their heads bowed, their voices silenced in Nana's presence. And then, there was something else, something even more disturbing. Nana's eyes always lingered on him for too long. At first, Kwaku thought he was imagining it. He convinced himself that his father's wife was simply being kind, that the way she looked at him was no different from how she looked at the others. But as days turned into weeks, he could no longer deny it. Her gaze was different. It was not the look of a mother toward a son. It was something more, something forbidden. One evening, as Kwaku sat sharpening his spear near the river, he heard the soft rustling of leaves behind him. He turned swiftly, his warrior instincts alert, but his muscles froze when he saw her, Nana, standing there, her golden wrapper clinging to her body, her eyes locked onto his. Kwaku, she called, her voice a melody that sent shivers down his spine. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to look away. "My father's wife, is there something you need?" She chuckled, a sound that reminded him of a snake slithering through dry leaves. "Must you always call me that?" "I am Nana. Just Nana." Kwaku tensed. "You are my father's wife? That is who you are?" Nana stepped closer, her fingers brushing lightly against his arm. "And if I wish to be something more?" The night air grew thick with tension. Kwaku could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. He could not believe what he was hearing. This was his father's wife, a woman who was meant to be a mother to him, yet here she was, speaking words that could bring ruin upon them both. He stepped back quickly, his breath unsteady. "This is not right." But Nana only smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Right and wrong are the chains that bind men, Kwaku. But you are not just any man." Before he could respond, she turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving him standing there, confused and afraid. The days that followed were filled with torment. Kwaku tried to avoid Nana as much as possible, but she was always there, watching him, whispering his name in the wind, haunting his dreams. He could not speak of this to anyone, for who would believe him? His father was blind to Nana's ways, and the other wives were too afraid to speak against her. But Kwaku knew that he could not keep this secret forever. One night, he decided to visit the great seer of the land, an old woman known as Mometono, who lived deep within the whispering forest. She was feared and respected, for it was said that she could see beyond the veil of this world. As Kwaku approached her hut, he felt a strange presence, as if the very trees were listening to his thoughts. The old woman sat outside, her milky eyes staring at nothing and everything at once. "You have come, son of Oduro," she said before he could even speak. Kwaku bowed. "Mometono, I seek wisdom." The old woman chuckled. "Wisdom? Or salvation?" Kwaku hesitated. "Both." Mometono motioned for him to sit. Speak, child. And so, he told her everything about Nana, her strange hold over his father, her unnatural beauty, and the way she looked at him. When he finished, the old woman was silent for a long time. Then, she sighed. I fear this day would come. Kwaku frowned. You know of this? Mometono nodded. Your father's wife is not just a woman, Kwaku. She is something far older, something dangerous. She is not of this world. Kwaku felt the air leave his lungs. What do you mean? The seer's voice dropped to a whisper. She is a spirit, a being that feeds on power and desire. She has bound your father to her will, but that is not enough. She wants more. She wants you. Kwaku's heart pounded. What must I do? The old woman reached for a small pouch, filled with strange herbs and powders. You must be careful, child. If she has chosen you, she will not stop until she gets what she wants. But there is a way to break her hold before it is too late. Kwaku leaned in, desperate for an answer. Tell me what to do. The old woman placed the pouch in his hands. You must face her. But beware, Kwaku, for in facing the spirit, you may also face the darkest parts of yourself. As Kwaku left the forest that night, he knew that his life would never be the same again. His father's wife was not just a woman, she was something far more dangerous. And now, he was trapped in her web. But one thing was certain. He would not go down without a fight. The great kingdom of Akosua was restless. Whispers moved like the evening wind through the palace corridors, carrying secrets, fears, and suspicions. The chief's wives, once filled with laughter and companionship, now moved like shadows, their conversations guarded, their eyes filled with worry. The reason? Nana. She had been in the palace for only a few months, but her presence was like a storm, quiet yet devastating. She had wrapped herself around Chief Oduro's heart, and nothing could shake her hold. Even the elders, who once held the chief's ear, now found their words dismissed with a wave of his hand. But Kwaku was not fooled. He had seen her for what she truly was, something beyond human, something dark and unnatural. The whispers of the jungle, the flicker of red in her eyes when she thought no one was looking, the way his father seemed weaker each passing day, it all pointed to a terrible truth. The dream of the ancestors. One night, as the rain beat against the palace roof, Kwaku tossed and turned in his sleep. A vision took hold of him. He stood in the middle of a vast savanna, the golden grass swaying in the wind. Before him stood an old man with a lion's mane of white hair. His eyes were filled with the wisdom of many lifetimes. Kwaku, the old man said, his voice deep as thunder. You are blind to the danger in your own home. I know, Kwaku whispered. She is not what she seems. The old man nodded. She has drunk from the well of darkness. If you do not act, your father will be swallowed whole, and your people will suffer. Kwaku felt the weight of his ancestors' words pressing against his chest. What must I do? The truth is buried in the forest, the old man said, his figure beginning to fade. Find it before it is too late. Kwaku awoke with a start, his body drenched in sweat. The jungle. He had to go back. The whispering forest. Before dawn, Kwaku wrapped himself in his cloak and slipped out of the palace. The journey to the whispering forest was not one taken lightly. Stories of spirits and lost souls filled the minds of the villagers, keeping them away. But Kwaku had no choice. The forest was alive with sounds, owls hooting, branches creaking, and something else, whispering. The voices came from nowhere and everywhere, wrapping around him like the wind. Why do you seek the truth? A voice hissed. Kwaku tightened his grip on his spear. I seek to save my father. Laughter echoed through the trees. Then you walk the path of danger, warrior. He pushed forward until he reached a clearing where an old hut stood, its walls covered in strange symbols. An elderly woman sat outside, her white, sightless eyes staring at him. You have finally come, Mometono said, her voice raspy yet powerful. I have been expecting you. Kwaku swallowed hard. Tell me about Nana. The old woman ran her fingers over the carvings on her staff. She is not from here. Not from this land, not from this world. A chill ran down Kwaku's spine. What is she? She was born in the depths of the river, where the spirits dwell. A child of the water, cursed to walk among men. She takes power from those she binds to her. Your father is her prey. Kwaku clenched his fists. How do I stop her? Mometono stood slowly, her frail body moving with the weight of time. You cannot fight her like an enemy of flesh. You must break the bond she has woven. The ties that bind. Kwaku returned to the palace before the first rays of sunlight touched the rooftops. He watched as Nana walked through the halls, her beauty unmatched, her presence commanding. She smiled at him, but he saw what others did not, the hunger in her eyes. That night, he hid outside his father's chamber, watching. As the palace slept, Nana entered. She moved like a shadow, her hands glowing with an eerie light as she placed them over the chief's chest. His father groaned in his sleep, his body growing weaker. It was true. She was feeding off him. Kwaku had seen enough. He had to act. But how do you fight something that is not human? The palace air had grown heavier, thick with unseen forces that only the wise could sense. Chief Oduro's strength waned with each passing day, and though the palace healers brewed the strongest medicines, none could cure him. The people whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with fear. Some said it was the work of the gods, others swore it was the curse of an unseen enemy. But Kwaku knew the truth. Nana. She moved through the palace with the grace of a queen, her dark skin glowing under the flickering torches. The other wives no longer held their heads high around her. She had won. Or so she thought. But Kwaku was ready. He had spoken with Mometono. He had learned the secrets of the whispering forest. Now, it was time to act. The test of fire. Late in the night, when the palace was deep in sleep, Kwaku entered his father's chamber. Chief Oduro lay weak on his bed, his breathing shallow. At the foot of the bed, Nana sat, her fingers trailing over his arm, her lips whispering words in a language Kwaku did not understand. She did not see him enter. Kwaku stepped closer, his heart pounding. He held in his hands a small pouch filled with sacred ash from Mometono's hut. If she is not of this world, she will react, the old woman had told him. With one swift movement, he threw the ash over Nana. A scream tore through the chamber, so piercing that the torches flickered and dimmed. Nana leaped from her seat, her body writhing in agony. Her eyes, once deep and mysterious, burned with a strange, unnatural glow. You dare. Her voice was not her own, it was layered, as though many voices spoke through her. Kwaku did not flinch. You are not welcome here. Nana laughed, a cold, bitter sound that sent shivers down his spine. And yet, I am here. She straightened herself, her body regaining its composure. Do you think your tricks can harm me, warrior? Kwaku tightened his grip on his spear. I know what you are. She stepped closer, unbothered by his weapon. There you know I cannot be stopped. But Kwaku had learned something else from Mometono. Nana's strength was not endless. She drew power from his father, from the bond she had tied to him. If that bond was broken, she would weaken. And there was only one way to break it. The ritual of severance. At dawn, Kwaku gathered the palace elders. The time for silence was over. My father is dying, he said. And it is because of Nana. Gasps filled the hall, but Kwaku did not waver. She is not of this world. She is feeding off him, and if we do not act, he will not see another moon. The elders murmured among themselves. Some were afraid, others skeptical. But one man, Elder Badu, stepped forward. If what you say is true, then there is only one way to prove it. A ritual. Nana was summoned to the great courtyard, her face calm, unreadable. The wife stood at a distance, watching. The warriors, including Kwaku, surrounded the space. Elder Badu spoke, his voice carrying over the courtyard. By the laws of the ancestors, if one among us is accused of bringing harm through unnatural means, they must prove their innocence. Nana smiled. And how do you wish to test me, elder? Badu held up a small bowl filled with sacred water. Drink. For the first time, something flickered across Nana's face. Uncertainty. But she took the bowl, raised it to her lips, drank. Silence fell over the courtyard. For a moment, it seemed nothing would happen. Then, Nana gasped. Her body convulsed. She fell to her knees, clutching her throat. Steam rose from her skin as though she were burning from within. She turned to Kwaku, her eyes blazing with hatred. You will regret this. Then, with a final, blood-curdling scream, she collapsed. The palace erupted into chaos. The wives cried out, the elders stepped back in fear, and the warriors raised their weapons. But Kwaku stood still, watching. Nana was not dead. He knew that much. She had only been weakened. And she would return? The storm approaches. Chief Oduro stirred in his bed later that night. His breathing had steadied. His skin no longer looked pale and lifeless. The bond had been broken. But as Kwaku looked out into the night, he felt no victory. The wind howled through the trees, carrying a whisper only he could hear. Nana was still out there. And she was angry. The kingdom of Akosua should have celebrated. Chief Oduro's health had improved, the palace had been freed from Nana's unnatural grip, and life seemed to return to normal. But Kwaku knew better. There was no peace, not yet. The night after Nana fell in the courtyard, the rain came. Heavy, relentless, angry. It was not the usual blessing of the land but a storm filled with fury. The winds howled like spirits in mourning, and lightning slashed across the sky like a warrior's blade. The people whispered in fear. Nana is not gone, they murmured. She is watching. And they were right. The warning of the drums. Before dawn, the sacred drums of Akosua thundered across the land, calling the elders, the warriors, and the chief's council. Kwaku stood before them, his hands clenched into fists. She is still out there, he said. We weakened her, but we did not destroy her. Elder Badu, who had led the ritual, nodded gravely. You are right, young warrior. The spirits do not lie. Another elder, a skeptical man named Ose, scoffed. We saw her fall. She is gone. But before Kwaku could respond, a palace guard burst into the hall, breathless. The river. The river is boiling. A hush fell over the gathering. The river Ofa, sacred and calm, never stirred in anger. But now, as the elders and warriors rushed to its banks, they saw the impossible, the water churned violently, steam rising into the air as if the river itself was in pain. The fish lay lifeless on the shore, their scales scorched. Then came the whispers. Low, hissing voices, calling around the warriors like unseen fingers. You think you have won, the voices sneered. The debt is not yet paid. Kwaku's blood turned cold. He knew whose voice that was. Nana. The return of the shadow. For 3 nights, the river continued to boil, and for 3 nights, the kingdom did not sleep. Livestock fell ill, the crops withered in patches, and strange footprints appeared outside the palace walls, deep, clawed, and inhuman. Chief Oduro had regained some of his strength, but he remained weak. She wants me back, he whispered to Kwaku. She is calling me. But Kwaku would not let that happen. The time for waiting was over. With his most trusted warriors, he prepared for the journey back to the Whispering Forest. Only Momotono knew what they must do next. A journey into darkness. As they entered the forest, the air grew heavy. The trees loomed taller, their branches twisting unnaturally. The warriors moved in silence, their weapons drawn, their eyes sharp. Then the shadows moved. Kwaku barely had time to shout before something lashed out from the darkness, claws scraping against shields, a piercing cry splitting the air. One warrior fell, blood staining his chest. Another was dragged screaming into the undergrowth. They were not alone. The creatures that served Nana, spirits bound to her will, had come to stop them. But Kwaku was ready. He raised his spear, the tip coated in the sacred ash from Mometono. As the first creature lunged, he struck, its body convulsed, then crumbled into dust. The others hesitated. Then, with unearthly shrieks, they fled into the night. Kwaku did not waste time. They had to reach Mometono before Nana struck again. The truth revealed. The old woman was waiting. She sat outside her hut, her white, sightless eyes staring at Kwaku as if she had seen his entire journey. She has grown stronger, Mometono said before he could speak. And she is not alone. Kwaku knelt before her. How do we stop her? The old woman traced a pattern into the dirt. Nana was not born like us. She came from the water, but she cannot return to it alone. Kwaku's breath caught. You mean? Yes, Mometono whispered. She was sent to take a soul back with her. That is the only way she can return? Understanding dawned on Kwaku. That was why she had bound herself to Chief Oduro. She needed him to complete her journey. But now that the bond was broken, she would come for another soul. Kwaku's. The battle ahead. As Kwaku and his warriors prepared to leave, Mometono handed him a small dagger. This blade is older than the kingdom itself. It was forged in fire and washed in the blood of kings. If you strike her with it, she will be severed from this world. Kwaku took the dagger, its weight solid in his palm. He knew what had to be done. Nana would not stop. She would not rest. Unless he ended her himself. The final battle was near. Stay tuned for episode 2.